Yeah, all right. So, hi everyone. My name is Caroline Campbell, and I am a field marketing manager at Certiport. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion on how to engage students and prepare them for a career using Autodesk Fusion 360. For everyone to know, we are currently recording this panel session, and we will send it out after the event. Additionally, at the end of this discussion, we will open it up for questions for each of our panelists. So feel free to utilize the chat feature and the Q&A feature in Zoom, and we'll address questions during this time. So with this, I am extremely excited to introduce our panelists for today. We have Craig Hughes, who is an engineering and technology education teacher, teaching Project Lead the Way engineering courses at Batesville High School in Batesville, Indiana. He has been teaching at Batesville High School for 12 years and has been working with Project Lead the Way for 8 years as a master teacher, training teachers to teach their Introduction to Engineering Design and Civil Engineering and Architecture courses. He is an alumnus of Purdue University and Ball State University, which has led his passion for teaching and branching out to start his own YouTube channel to provide tutorials and help for Project Lead the Way students and teachers. We also have Marc on the call with us, who is a physics and engineering teacher of 10 years at Hillside High School in New Jersey. At the school, he began the Project Lead the Way program 6 years ago. In addition, he is a mentor for their engineering and robotics after-school club, where they compete in REC VEX robot competitions and virtual drone competitions. His mission is to guide students in identifying their passions and enhancing their skills to increase the accessibility of STEAM career paths. And then last but not least, we do have as well Matthew Anderle on the call with us. Matthew is a director of digital strategy for Digital Practice and Technology Group with a focus on the Americas. He is a BIM and design technology evangelist with over 22 years of experience establishing global BMI workflows and standards around content, training, interoperability, and digital delivery methods. His experience spans over multiple market sectors with an emphasis on large healthcare facilities, data centers, aviation, government projects, and residential. Matt is a leader in the innovative and efficient implementation of BIM processes for a variety of project types. He manages and directs large projects teams on inter-office BIM collaboration workflows, enabling global offices to work as one entity. So first off, I just wanted to welcome and thank all of our speakers for being here with us today and taking time out of their busy schedules. So as I said, we're just going to kick it off with a couple questions for our panelists, and at the end, we'll open it up for an open Q&A. But just to start off, as a little introduction, could each of you go around and just explain or let us know why you chose to teach Fusion 360, or you chose to go into your current industry? And if you don't mind, Craig, if we could start off with you, please.
Sure thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my choice for Fusion 360 was kind of chosen by Project Lead the Way. For the Introduction to Engineering Design course, they decided to kind of shift from Autodesk Inventor to Fusion 360. So it was one of those choices that kind of led me to it. But I think as well, it was something that I'd heard in the industry. It was starting to pick up. The product was definitely starting to gain some speed. I'd started to notice on a lot of social media channels that it was starting to just, become a little bit more noteworthy. So I think it was one of the things that kind of led me to do it. And so I kind of started using Fusion 360. I was also at a local community college here. I was teaching a course, and I actually kind of before we adopted it and started it last year using Fusion in our Intro to Engineering Design course, I actually, before the pandemic hit, taught in a college course, and they were kind of my test group, if you so to speak. And so we were able to go through and see a lot. To me, it gave me an opportunity to learn a lot about Fusion, and especially teaching it. And I just kind of further submitted some of the benefits of it, submitted the reasons why I saw Project Lead the Way was going to move to it, and then also kind of what benefits it was going to have for us here at Batesville High School as well.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. And I was just saying how we have a lot of educators that are extremely excited to tap into your and Mark's experience with Project Lead the Way. So Mark, if you don't mind going next, and then we'll move to Matt.
Hi, so I, like Craig, I do Project Lead the Way, the intro to engineering class, the principles of engineering class, and the civil engineering architects class. And by the way, Craig, I'm a huge fan of your YouTube channels, and it's been extremely helpful over the years. So I had to do that, sorry. As with Project the Way, they kind of do encourage fusion. I could have gone the SolidWorks route. I could have gone the Onshape route. And to be honest with you, I really preferred Inventor or Fusion. Fusion, it seems to be the up and coming piece, much like AutoCAD, Revit, is supplanted AutoCAD in the architectural business there with them and whatnot. To be honest, I love it. Onshape wasn't as intuitive for students, either was SolidWorks, and it seems to be, especially being cloud-based, extremely important for our kids to be able to go at home on their computers, their Chromebooks. Even the iPhone app actually isn't horrible, actually. It's surprising. It's helpful to, I think one of the reasons why I think I really enjoy is it's easy to share projects to non-users. And I'm sure we'll talk more and more about that later on. But I think it's a fantastic platform that's easy to use in the classroom, and I believe, from what I understand, it's being really picked up with the industry as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And then Matt, if you could go ahead, and I know you were nodding along to Mark's answer as well on that question.
Yeah, I'm probably going to repeat a lot of the same answers. Fusion is a very approachable software for us, and it's something that's intuitive for all age groups. It's something that can be perceived by a variety of different skill sets. And so in our industry, it's important for us to convey the right message and the right design to our teams in an intuitive way. And to do that, Fusion is a very easy technology to adopt. And because it's cloud-based, because it's so distributable, and because our teams can use things like iPhones and iPads and other tablets to access models and move around with the touch of their fingers or even just a mouse click, makes that such an easy platform to be able to share what some of our sophisticated designers are doing at a complex level with the entire team and have that same interpretation of that design. So Fusion being approachable, being a cloud-based application, and really providing an opportunity for all skill sets to engage is a go-to for us in some of that conceptual and that front end of component design.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm excited to kind of dig down into the answers with some of the questions that we have coming up. So I know right now we have a lot of educators who have joined us for this discussion, also a lot of the individuals who are going to be viewing this. So I just wanted to start off with questions geared towards Mark and Craig, specifically focused in your education sphere. So for each of you, could you just start off, just to put things in context, explain how your program is set up at your schools, and then ultimately, how do your students choose to attend, your courses with Fusion 360? And then Mark, if we're going to go ahead and start off with you first.
Hi, so again, we offer the Project the Way engineering classes. So the freshmen or the sophomores, they start off taking our Intro to Engineering Design class. How they choose, very often I am the Project Lead the Way fanboy. I'm always going to visit the middle school campus. I'm on social media kind of promoting, that's dampened a bit during the pandemic time here now. But I'm constantly trying to show off the amazing models that our kids are doing. So our program is changing and how it's being set up. I believe that we're now going to try to have pathways, and forgive the air quotes, but we'll choose a STEM pathway, and then these are the prescribed classes that they'll be in. I always try and ask that there's some wiggle room in these pathways that our school is creating. But right now it looks like we're going the pathway program, and in doing so, they'll be able to pick their courses that way.
No, that's great. And then Craig, I'm going to direct the same question to you, but in addition to your question, could you just explain for the people who may not be necessarily familiar with Project Lead the Way, what it actually is, and then go into how your program is set up?
Sure. So yeah, I guess to start off with, Project Lead the Way is an organization, a nonprofit organization that provides STEM curriculum, and they have three pathways for high school students: engineering, biomedical science, and computer science. And then they also have a middle school program called Gateway, and as well now they've branched down also into an elementary program known as Launch. So the focus, especially in the younger grades, is to expose students more to science and math, and how does it apply in the world, and kind of gain that interest, and also to in a lot of cases, they do a lot of things with diversity, trying to attract more females into STEM careers, and also minorities. So as well, so as those groups are we're trying to outreach to a lot of those. And so, but also the goal of Project Lead the Way with the curriculum is to set a lot of students on the pathway, if they're going to take the engineering pathway, that we are preparing them for a 4-year bachelor's degree at a college level. At our school, I'll be honest, not all the time do we necessarily have where I'll have students that go that route. Sometimes they will decide maybe to go a 2-year technical degree, or even go into the workforce and then earn some sort of certification. I've had students through the Project Lead the Way courses that, one, for example, that comes off the top of my head, he is now a licensed electrician. And I saw him out at a football game, and he said he owed a lot of the credit to Project Lead the Way, and learning, and teaching him those problem solving skills and some of the content that we covered. But by no means is the program set up to teach him to become a licensed electrician, but it gave him a lot of good foundational skills to be successful. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things about Project Lead the Way, is that we have really great curriculum that builds students knowledge and skills, and it's applicable to a lot of different areas, and to a lot of different kind of maybe levels of where you might want to be within your life, whether it go into career or college, and then eventually career. So that's usually one of the best parts about it. So at our school, we have a 4-year sequence. So we have our freshmen, again, take the Intro to Engineering Design course, which is where they're using Fusion 360. We have the sophomores take our Principles of Engineering course. Our junior year is the Civil Engineering and Architecture course. And then the senior year is called Engineering Design and Development. So it's more of a capstone course where students, it's kind of a little bit more open-ended. I kind of compare it to a research and design kind of course. And with that, I actually, the seniors that I have this year, it was kind of an interesting route to go. They were all trained in Autodesk Inventor. They all had that as freshmen. And then this year, I actually said, why don't we try out Fusion and see how this goes? And they took to it really well. So actually what I'm seeing is giving them experiences with the software. They're seeing a lot of connections between CAD programs, and some others have kind of gone into some other courses we have available. We also, at our school, we also have a manufacturing co-op, and at that co-op they use SolidWorks. And so I'll have students that will go on, they'll take SolidWorks. They're seeing a lot of similarities between CAD softwares of different brands, different types from different companies. But then they also, which makes me proud, they also go through and say, yeah, but to me, Inventor's my favorite, or Fusion's my favorite. And so I'm obviously a big Autodesk fan. And so, so I'm going, yep, those are my kids for sure. So a little bit of personal preference in there, but yeah, so we have a lot of great things that we're able to do with the kids through Project Lead the Way. As far as how they get into it, I'm much like Mark. I'm the salesman, kind of thing. And so I go to our middle school. I do have a social media channel. It's funny because I actually just have I have the same thing when the pandemic hit. My Instagram that I made for the school, for our program, kind of went by the wayside. I'm starting to get back into that, and I do have some seniors right now that are doing a really great job of trying to help with me kind of get back into this promotion once more. But we do have really good numbers for our program, and it's because of also word of mouth. Our older students are talking about it. They are going through and just talking to their cousins, their brothers, their younger siblings, and their friends, and just saying what kind of class should I take? Oh, we'll take Project Lead the Way. It's fun. And it's fun and it's engaging, and a lot of it I think is because of some things that we get to do with the Autodesk software that we have.
No, thank you very much. And I can just tell from both of your answers, you have so much passion as well. So I'm sure that plays a huge role into people wanting to take your classes. So I know one big question that a lot of people had before this panel discussion is, for each of you, what resources do you use to teach Fusion 360? And what curriculum? Do you have any project lesson plans that you'd be willing to share, or ideas? If we could start off with, we'll flip it this time. Craig, if you could start us off, and then we'll go to Mark.
So actually, when I first went to I kind of noted before, I started teaching Fusion in a college course at a community college course, and I did that as it was a small group of maybe about 8 students, and they ranged from your typical college student of 18 to 19 years old, and then I had somebody who was in their 60s. So a pretty large range of students. So it was kind of interesting to see, again, just as we talk about, and I think it was Matt that went through and noted it's very accessible to people of all ages, and that's definitely something that I saw. But as far as learning the software, I think a lot of my background with Autodesk Inventor, I'd used that for several years. That was very helpful. One of the things I usually tell the students is that the icons are even the same. As far as if you're going to extrude something, it's the same icon, and so and at least that kind of basic process. But I guess I'm a little bit more traditional. I actually went out to Amazon and bought textbooks that some users had, and I had one that was and I can always provide a link for it if we need to, but it was a power guide for beginner and intermediate users for Autodesk Fusion 360. And before I would teach that class, I would just kind of look at what kind of lessons did they have, the exercises. A lot of when you're an educator, you can sign up on their website, and they also gave you some free resources. So like PowerPoints, but also, they had some answer keys and things like that. So that was really nice to go through, and they would have like the finished model after you did some of the exercises, and then you could just check, does the model that you have match, in terms of its physical properties, or, some things of that nature. And so that kind of gave me some validation that, I was pretty confident with going into teaching that course in the evenings, that I would go in that night and feel pretty confident. So I'm, like I said, I did a lot of textbooks, but Autodesk had a lot of great resources online. I still go through and use YouTube, quite a bit. There's a lot of great individuals that are just doing different things with Fusion right now, and I'm still learning a bunch about it. I mean, by no means do I feel like I'm an expert. When we go through training, sometimes my partner teacher, when we teach together, he'll say that I am, and I'm like, don't tell people that, please, because it's be about my time. I'll get a question that I can't answer, but there's a lot of great things out there, on the web, and that's kind of how I learned, and I still pick up a lot of great things just from talking to other people and just looking up, resources like that.
No, that's great. And I think that's the beauty of being in the industry that we're in. We're constantly learning and evolving. The learning never ends. So with that, Mark, if you don't mind tackling that question next.
Hi, so I had a little bit different experience than Craig, more like trial by fire. So with the pandemic happening, I had to learn Fusion 360 real fast on my own in the middle of the pandemic. So we didn't have, obviously kids were at home, so they had their Chromebooks, and I had heard little stuff through the grapevine that Fusion was finally going to be able to put on the Chromebook. So I waited patiently, and I waited, and I was finally able to use on the Chromebook, because I wasn't a fan, again, of the other products out there like Onshape. I just didn't find it as intuitive. And since I knew Inventor so much, it was a nice little jump step from Inventor to Fusion. So I often took things from, I learned through Project the Way, they really give step-by-step lessons for the teachers. I did go through Fusion's catalog, just like Craig mentioned, and I was able to look at those things. The School of YouTube is fantastic. I went through some of Craig's videos, to be honest. There's 100 days of Fusion on a YouTube channel. That was a fantastic resource. And throughout these different projects, I was really able to pick it up pretty naturally, especially because I had some vendor experience. You know, some quick lessons I'm currently doing is everything's about air purification and keeping the air as clean as possible. So with Earth Day coming up, we decided to have the students research what type of plants are the best for air purification, but with a couple caveats, right? So we need to add some constraints to this fact. So the teacher's taking care of them, they have little time, they don't want any soil, and we came up with a whole big list, and we decided on air plants. And then they're still designing it now. They're now going to design an air plant holder. Some are going to be hanging as per the constraints per teacher. Some are going to be on the whiteboard, and that's low hanging fruit for a kid just to make a simple design to actually solve a solution using Fusion 360. Some other ones that I think I've stolen from many others before me are skyscrapers or mugs or what's the true hit? Oh, they love to make trophies. The silliest laugh, almost like the superlatives like you have like in yearbook class. They love these ideas that are enable them to use their creativity. And again, it's relatively low hanging fruit because Fusion is so intuitive, and the tools are well, they're fantastic. They're fantastic.
No, that's great to hear. And I know probably a lot of people's creativity, there's definitely room for creativity with Fusion 360. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, Mark, with the pandemic, and you had to pretty much learn, the software rapid fire. But for Craig and Mark, what are the biggest challenges that you've observed when teaching Fusion 360, and what have you done to overcome them? And I'll start off with Mark this time.
So via pandemic, teach or doing any CAD program, it's sometimes the little things, and kids didn't have a mouse and they're trying to use a touchpad, and there I was gathering my mouse in my classroom, dropping them off at doorsteps during the pandemic, because trying to do Fusion without a mouse is let's just say difficult. Zooming in, zooming out, right clicking, panning and all that stuff. It's the little things, right? It's the little things we kind of forget about sometimes. So definitely in a mouse, I'm sorry, what was the other? Oh, how do I encourage them, correct?
Oh, I was just going to say what the biggest challenges that you've observed when it comes to teaching Fusion 360, and then how you overcame them.
So some of the bigger challenges is getting them to save their projects in a nice orderly fashion, be able to retrieve them. Although Fusion makes that relatively simple, I think that's part of the challenge, is to make sure that they save stuff properly. In this digital world with mostly smartphones, I think this generation doesn't have that organization of putting files into places, and then of course organizing their stuff in a way that's helpful to them and for their management. The other challenge I have is to make sure that they're spatial learners, trying to think about things in 3D when they're kind of used to drawing up until really now in 2D fashion in art classes. So getting them to see that the opposite view and isometric view, I think that's always a challenge. What does it look behind it? Where would you extrude that? So I think getting kids to look beyond the shape in a 2D version into translating it to 3D, I think that's always a challenge I have. I often put a shape on the board and I say, how would you make that? What's the most efficient way of making that, right? I mean, you could certainly, if I gave you 3 hours, you can carve that as stone, but how could you actually create that in a model in Fusion that's simple and using the actual tools that Fusion gives you. And that's part of the fun too, of course, those challenges, you know.
And I saw, Craig, you were nodding along to all of Mark's answers. So I'm sure you have your own set of challenges. Do you mind answering the question as well?
Yeah, I think Mark might be a mind reader. So that's a lot of the same kind of issues. It's funny. It's that, you know, no matter where you're at, I'm in Indiana, he's in New Jersey. It was funny because, you know, being a project lead the way master teacher, I've been through a lot of different places, and I had a regular gig actually out at Rowan University in New Jersey. So, you know, yeah, so I'd done training out there. So, and it was just funny that it's no matter where you're at, you know, as a teacher, you kind of run into some of the same issues. And so the mouse definitely hits home. It's one of those things that I ended up just buying a set of USB corded mice, you know, so just for like a classroom set. And I just tell everybody get a mouse, you know, and then when the student goes through and, you know, well, and they're trying to use the trackpad, because at our school, we have MacBook Airs. Every student, we're a one-to-one computing and a one-to-one, you know, kind of school. And so that was one of the reasons also why I switched to Fusion 360, because right now in my classroom, which is where I'm at, all the computers that I have, we had to have Windows machines, HP computers to be able to run Autodesk Inventor. So, which kind of constrains you time-wise for, you know, some of the projects and things. And so it was like, you know, whenever you had a large modeling project, you had to do it in the classroom. And if you had a student that was absent, then you had to find the time to work with them, or, you know, see if they could make up the time. Like we have a student resource time at our school as well. And so that can be challenging. So that was one reason why I switched to Fusion, because we were able to install that on the desktop version on all of their MacBook Airs. And so that has worked out really well with some of those challenges that I had of, like, you know, being able to just, you know, get projects done a little bit more, or it's like, okay, you know, and I can provide them my YouTube videos and say, you know, okay, go home tonight and model these parts and make sure that you're ready for the assembly tomorrow or something like that, you know, depending upon what we're doing. And so those are some of the challenges, but yeah, I mean, you know, kind of like what Mark said, you know, the mouse and some of the spatial visualization is definitely something that can be challenging. For me, it's also sometimes just the manipulation of creating a drawing, which is more, I don't know if necessarily is a Fusion kind of issue. It's just, you know, students just kind of like, I think it kind of ties into Mark's comment, is just being able to, students understanding, like, what information do you need in order to properly, you know, and what tools do you need to use in Fusion to properly document a design. And so the way I've kind of done that is I've kind of taken an industry practice of redlining drawings and incorporated that into my classroom, to where they'll submit the drawings. I go through with pretty much a red marker and start marking up, and then hand it back to them with a score and say, here you are. You know, right now, if you did not correct this, this is the score you would have. And then they would, and it kind of forces them to go back, because some of them, I think the issue is they don't know, you know, how to, you know, when we go, even though we've gone through it, we get about to this point in the school year, they forget how to set in, you know, a center mark pattern in Fusion. They forget how to go through and use some of those functionalities that maybe we've only used it very minimal. And now we've come to a part where we need to have it. And so it starts to kind of prompt that discussion now when they go through and say, well, how do I do this? Oh, well, you click this option and you click here. And so it gets that going. And I think really kind of, you know, helps increase their you know, competency with the software, when, you know, it's like, okay, you made a mistake or you maybe missed something. How do we now learn, you know, or what is it we're missing from this? And then now they can feel like that they've learned, oh, okay, well, now that was easier than I thought, you know, kind of thing that comes out of it. So those are some of my challenges as far as how that's been. And as far as, you know, Fusion, you know, it's been a great way for us to kind of also catch students up and just, you know, bridge some of those gaps at times where time is always a factor.
No, I can 100% understand that. It's always the little things. And then also we never have enough time for anything, it seems like, anymore. But I did want to just shift gears slightly. just to make sure we give Matt some time to speak, but give us his industry expertise. So I know Mark and Craig went a little bit into the curriculum that they use, the different programs and everything, but could you let us know, what are the different uses of Fusion 360, within the industry?
Absolutely. A lot of topics that we've talked about so far are very relevant to our production or our design and engineering industry. I like a lot of themes that are coming out of the discussion today. Things like cloud-based collaboration, getting familiar with the 3D concepts and 3D design work are all key skills that feed into our profession. And to give some example, one of the questions was how did you mitigate some of the challenges around COVID-19 and the pandemic and working from home. Our office, ACOM, has about 50,000 team members and employees around the world. And within a couple of weeks, we all picked up our computers, went home, and started working. And so the importance of that familiarity with the cloud is very important. Our teams were often using that technology already. And so it wasn't that much of a shift for us. In fact, we maintained most of our production within that transition time. And just that theme at the early onset of getting into design, getting familiar with the design tools, is going to carry into our profession quite well. How we use Fusion in the industry is really focused around some of our conceptual design. So Craig, I love your background. I'm sure each of the teachers on this call have a similar room that looks like that. That to me looks like a maker, and you're promoting, students making things. We use it exactly the same way, and our teams have tens of thousands of things that we've 3D printed, conceptual design for buildings, conceptual design for parts, engineering specific scope, and within my industry, which is the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, we use it for component type design. So we're looking at connectivity of things, so for structure, we're looking at component-based design for either engineering part or some sort of machine that we're going to design and put into buildings. And then, of course, at the building scale, we do a lot of conceptual design for design work for buildings at that level within Fusion, because we have a lot of manipulation within that platform. So that familiar with the design, the shape, the form, the feeling what the function of this space is. Within Fusion, we have a lot of flexibility that's not restricted by, I guess, a lot of the documentation software like Revit that we use. And so there's some freedom that comes with Fusion and some design creativity that our designers are permitted to use that platform. And then it's a quick to fabrication type of software. So Revit is a full-scale virtual representation of buildings, right? That doesn't shrink down to a printer bed quite as efficiently as like a Fusion model does. So when we want to reproduce building components or building designs, make some sort of like site of buildings, and have some parts and pieces that are tangible that we take to our clients, we often will design those kind of components in Fusion, including our conceptual designs that we have for the new buildings that we're doing, and have a lot of variation in what our themes are around the architecture. 3D print those, and then bring a collection of parts out to our client meetings and let them play around with them, just like kids, and put them on the site, rotate them around, see which one fits into the landscape or the surrounding areas more aesthetically, or which is more aesthetically defined. So in the industry, Fusion really has that concept of that conceptual design approach, having the freedom of our designers to kind of manipulate shape and form a lot easier than maybe a Revit or other design software provides us. And it's that quick to production. So we can take our designs and quickly prototype them, print them out, and assess them, something that's kind of different.
Yeah, thank you very much. So a follow-up question, and I know we were talking a little bit before this panel discussion, and we were talking about how the skill for Fusion 360 is really needed in the industry. So how do you see this demand evolving, years down the road?
Well, it's such a different educational system now than when we have gone through that sort of education. And the integration of technology is much more abundant. And I think that the familiarity of the skills are providing for the kids with the 3D design and the conceptual design approach, bringing out the creativity and technology is going to yield them a lot more opportunities when they get into college, of course, and then when they get into the profession. The skills that are most important, I think, are the familiarity with how to manipulate shape. So I can create something, I can change the shape of it, I can move the shape of it, and then evolve that into a simulation of that shape. So what we deal with in the industry is stresses on objects. So generative design and computational design, taking a form and then analyzing what the stresses of that form are and where you might need to change design to address those stresses. So Fusion ideally has all of those opportunities in its platform as it sits today. And being able to create a shape, create something that's interesting in design, and then run some analysis on it, provides that the students, just a conceptual look at what kinds of things are affecting the real world scenario of this design if we were to fabricate out of certain materials or of the design they created. So all of those skills lead into what we do in our profession. And whether they pursue engineering degrees or architecture degrees or industrial design degrees, those kind of things are those fundamental skills that are going to lead them down one of those career paths that they can take into college and then of course take into their profession.
Thank you very much. And with that, the fundamental skills. I know, like I said, we have a lot of educators on the call, and we've mentioned Revit a little bit earlier, but is there any other softwares that you would recommend students learn so they're prepared, for the industry?
Absorb it all. I'm an Autodesk proponent myself. I'm an Autodesk Expert Elite member, and part of that is to share some of the opportunities that students have with the Autodesk software suite. And when you get into a professional career that has those types of applications, you're going to focus on what the industry is that you're going to pursue. So for instance, if you're in industrial design, you're likely looking at an inventor or a fusion combinations of those things. Something that's a CAD/CAM approach where you're going to fabricate after you design. Whereas if you're looking at something like architecture and engineering, you're looking at Revit. You're going to design buildings, create that digital twin of the physical within the virtual space. You're in simulation and road calculations in the building before you go to construct it with the constructor and then operate the building. So kind of your career path, in the Autodesk suite, we're talking about that, just we're talking about Fusion today. Likely something like an inventor if you want to go into something that's more of a product design, or Revit would be something that's going to be used in professional career.
And then one of the other questions I have, and I am going to open this up then to our other panelists as well, is obviously Certiport, we're focused on industry recognized certification. So Matt, can you just describe, what does certification do for students, that are getting into the industry, or what is the impact of certification?
It's that one extra checkbox on your resume when you're looking for a job and you're looking to advance in your career. And a lot of times we are submitting resumes for projects to win projects with the team members on our staff that have those certifications. So if we have Revit certified professionals, or if we have expert elites, or we have others who are qualified in the application as some sort of leader or some sort of professional, those are the industries that are the individuals that we gravitate towards when we go to kind of advertise for jobs. So having that skill and have that certification when you come into the industry will certainly put your resume a step ahead of others who don't have it. But it's not something that's required. Skills are skills, and if you don't have a certification, that's something that will set you back. But certainly having a certification that provides that credential when you're going to apply for jobs will move you to step forward.
Thank you. And then I'm going to go ahead and open that same question up then for Mark and Craig, if either of you want to answer that as well.
So the one that, said to answer live, is that the one you're referring to?
What is the value of certification, for students, potential, maybe even for educators who might be hesitant?
Yeah, I think actually, listening to Matt's, kind of answer, I think is probably the biggest thing, because here recently in the state of Indiana, a lot of our diploma requirements have changed. And so we've kind of moved away a little bit from standardized testing as being a large requirement for high school graduates. And we're starting to now focus, we started to see this new shift into how do we have students become certified. And so my principal and I, we've been in a lot of discussion as far as how do we, prepare the Batesville High School graduate, just, when they walk out the door, what is the thing that we are setting them up for in a little bit better scenario than what we have maybe in the past. And we used to offer the certification exams as in prior to a lot of our diploma requirements changing. We had, I think the last time we offered was about 2015. It used to be a checkbox for a technical honors diploma, which was an addition onto an academic honors diploma in the state of Indiana. So it was one of those things that it was, especially our Project Lead the Way students, they had to have an industry certification. So this was a great way for most of our students in Project Lead the Way are a little bit more, I kind of add the academic honors route, and they don't have the ability to take a course or maybe, have the opportunity to go for an industry certification. It's just something that, they don't have built into their day. So it was a great way for us to incorporate, that way they were kind of earning a dual honors diploma kind of scenario. And so that kind of changed a little bit, I think around 2016, 17, and then got to be Indiana changed some requirements. And then it said, well, they just have to have 3 dual credits in a concentrated area, which, taking 2 PLTW courses and earning dual credit, check the box. So then suddenly we really didn't see the need that students needed to take that certification exam. So I'll be honest, on myself, I was like, oh, okay, well, if we don't have students that need to take it, then, that's just something that we kind of, it just ended up not intentionally, just kind of falling by the wayside. Here recently, as we've been dealing with these new requirements, that discussion came back up, and I said, I've got the perfect solution. And so it was something that, working through Certiport, and actually just recently, it was actually just last week, I spoke to our education foundation, our local group here. And so they are actually going to fund for our seniors that are going into, into the STEM careers. So I have about 13 seniors that are going to be going into either a mechanical, like engineering or mechanical engineering technology, or they're going into a civil engineering or maybe a building construction management, kind of major at college or something related. And they actually offered to pay for the cost of their certification exams. So, we're bringing that back actually. And I went through the process of, I actually certified myself in Autodesk Inventor, Revit, Fusion, and AutoCAD. So as I taught AutoCAD as well at our local community college. And so I did that just kind of give myself one, I think, I always like the questions that they go through of why are you taking this exam? And so I think probably the checkbox that most relates to me is like personal validation of my skills. So as I want to feel like that I'm teaching this, I want to feel like that I know what I'm doing. And so yeah, but we're doing that. We're offering that to students. And to me, and I'm glad to hear, the comment that was made before and that's kind of how I described it to my students. It's one less checkbox that when they go into an interview that they don't have to really explain. And we actually have a student of mine who his dad is an engineer, and the intern they hired for a summer said he was a SolidWorks master on his resume, and quickly found out that was not the case. And so I was really, and it's given me a great example that they found out that, that I said, yeah, if, he should have put he was a certified SolidWorks associate. And so those were some things that, it gave me a really great example that I took into that education foundation meeting that I presented at to say, this is what this is going to do for our students. And, it's, and so the certification that they're going to earn from the certified user exam, they could go on and earn and go on and to be a certified professional. So it is kind of setting them on a path that, if they wish to pursue something further, they definitely have their start, and hopefully it'll be something that they do look at pursuing. And a lot of my students who are very excited, especially when they found out that I was, getting their exams paid for them and everything, they were very excited. So we got a lot of students that are doing, Inventor and Fusion, mainly because they asked me and I would love to hear the industry kind of feedback on it. Is that I said, a lot of companies may be using Inventor, but we may see a shift in the future where Fusion starts to become, kind of the standard software that we see in industry. And so I said, it's just going to make you more versatile. I said, the fact that you've got 2 certifications in a mechanical design based software. And then we have some that are going to just do in Revit. And so that's, I'm excited to get them certified. And I think it's going to be a really great thing to also for them to see their validation of their skills.
Yeah, that's great. And I don't know, Mark, if you have anything else to add to that.
I think, Craig, you took the words out of my mouth. That was fantastic. Yeah. I think just to dovetail, excuse me, I think it's a great thing, especially teaching wise. There are often times where you're like, hey, I don't actually know how to do what you want me to do. And so getting that certification makes you feel like a master of your own teaching. And I think, when you feel like you've mastered your own craft, you're able to teach it better. And that's just, I think it's the best way to put it.
No, that's great. And I know we have the same thing. It gives confidence boosts to teachers and educators, but then also the students where they're like, yes, I'm able to do this. I'm able to go. It's funny, Craig, your thing about, I'm a master user. Well, what does that mean? We've definitely seen those case scenarios before, and I'm sure, Matt, you have too, in the industry as well. But I do want to make sure we have enough time to get to some of the questions. I know we've been going back and forth in the chat, so I'm just going to do one last question before we open it up for an open Q&A with the attendees. And the last question is very broad, so take it how you will. For an educator just starting out, looking at potentially teaching Fusion 360, what piece of practical advice would you give them for each of you? Mine is obviously, we learned you need a mouse. So make sure all your students have mice. So we'll make sure to have that. But if we could actually start off, we'll start off with Matt.
Yes, certainly. And in my experience will be probably more in the industry and talking about some professionals that have used other design softwares and now they're going to maybe back into Fusion 360 from Revit or other application. A lot of times we're finding that the greatest impact that is successful in what we teach and training our staff is finding that project that they're passionate about. And what they have, that self-motivation and that interest that intrigues them to learn the software, they overcome the challenges and other difficulties that they might have at the front end of learning it. And really the ambition that they have to make something and to develop something that's tangible out of the application is about their inspiration, their drive to make that successful. So find a project that your students are passionate about. Maybe it could be different projects, maybe the same project, but something that is engaging for them. That they'll want to drive to learn more about the application, make the thing that they're designing work, and it's working well for us the professional.
Thank you. And then Craig or Mark, whoever would like to go next.
I can go ahead and jump in if you want. I think the biggest thing I can tell anybody who's probably getting started with Fusion 360, and I cover this a lot with teachers that I train for Project Lead the Way, is that we go through a 2-week training process most of the time in the summer, and occasionally we do have some fall sessions that go for longer. But a lot of times these teachers are teaching in the course at the same time. They're trying to learn Fusion 360, within our training. And so, but for the ones, in the traditional sense, when we've trained for 2 weeks, we cover a lot of content in 2 weeks, and we cover a lot of things that they need to be aware of for when they teach it with students. But I think the biggest piece of advice I can give to teachers is, you can't be afraid of it. It's one of those things that you're not going to know everything. And I know that's disconcerting a lot of times to teachers, because as we come into the classroom, it's very much that we're kind of the bearer of all knowledge. And there's going to be times where a kid's going to do something and they're going to bring the computer up to you and they're going to ask you what's going on. And you're going to go, I have no idea what you did. And, and so you just see all these, errors that have shown up And so it's like, okay, well, let's start deleting these constraints you have on here and just start working your way back until, you kind of figure it out. And so, and I think it's good for your students to see that, and is to see that process that, it's not something very simple all the time, that it is something that, you have to kind of apply a problem solving process to. And I think the big thing is don't let that embarrass you, because the kids are going to pick up on it and are going to do things and are going to not be afraid to press this button and do this and afraid to mess anything up. They're going to try it out. And so, and there's times where, especially early on in my teaching career, it was, a student would figure something out and I'd be, okay, now help this person, or get up in front of the class and show everybody what you just did. So, there's a little bit of, and sometimes I think, it takes the kids also a little bit aback when that happens, because it's like, that's kind of the environment I think you have to kind of build, is this collaborative environment where you're kind of, you're working together. And the other thing is too, is, kids sometimes are going to go home and they're going to play in Fusion because they have the time to do it. And whereas some of us who are adults, where it's like we have families, we have things to juggle at home, we've got things going on, you don't have all the time to go home and practice with it all the time and learn something new every single night. And, and I've had that where some kids, I had a student, he's a senior, and he designed an entire Rubik's Cube, which right now he's actually having 3D print the pieces to, and he's going to assemble it. And that was kind of like his senior project that he was wanting to kind of do. And it's a different style Rubik's Cube than what, is kind of out there in production. So, he has the time to do that. And he has learned a lot of ways to make parts and to make things efficiently and to try things out. And he's shown me some things that I'm going, yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way, but that's actually a really good way to approach things. So, there's times where you can't let it be, there's going to be some scenarios where there's going to be other people that are going to figure things out and do things in these softwares, whether it's Fusion, Inventor, Revit, no matter what, there's going to be some things that go in there that everybody's going to have different ways of accomplishing it. And so that can be sometimes tough with teaching it. But I think as long as you have an open mindset and you don't let that bother you, that it's not a reflection upon yourself, and that it's just, it's just the facet of, to me, I love it because, I learn something new every time. And even, after teaching 12 years, there's something that's always kind of like, oh yeah, that is a better way of doing it. Or, and just kind of seeing that, whether it's a student, whether it's a teacher that I'm training, whether it's another master teacher that I'm working with for a Project Lead the Way training, I learn something new every time. And I think that just that kind of, that open mindset you have to have, and don't let it be something that, you get embarrassed by, or don't let it deter you from pushing forward and trying new things.
Okay. And then Mark, did you have anything to add or any practical tips?
I just really want to echo. I mean, it's failing in front of your kids is sometimes really helpful for them to see. And then of course, helpful for them to see you work through it. I think that's super key. One feature that Fusion has that most programs don't have is a timeline feature. Teaching physics for how long as I've done, if they don't show the work, I don't know where they went wrong. So with Fusion having a timeline feature, it's very, very easy for me to point to the mouse along. In fact, there's actually almost like a video editing software to it, where you can play through how they make different pieces, and then you go, aha, that's where you went wrong. And that's where all the the arrows comes up. So Fusion, in comparison to Inventor and the others I've used, is very helpful in troubleshooting, much so than the others. But again, creating that collaborative culture of let's try something out. Let's make some crazy things with forms. There are often times where we'll have a fire drill or something along those lines, and we only have 5 minutes left. Okay, everybody, make something in Fusion and submit it. Make something the craziest thing you can. You use 3 tools, and they love feeling through the versatility of Fusion.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we are running out of time, but I do want to make sure that we do get some audience questions for everyone to know. Just a reminder, we will send out a recording of this panel discussion. Also, if it's okay with all of our speakers, if we could share your contact information. I know, Craig, you already dropped the YouTube link in there. I know people are really excited to get your YouTube channel link. And then also anyone who has any questions about certification, Certiport in general, will definitely follow up with you on a one-on-one chat and connect you with your territory manager. But one question that we got was, how are the 3D functions compared to AutoCAD? And I saw, Craig, you started answering this question. So if you want to tackle this one.
Yeah, I started to answer and then kind of got sidetracked. But I would say in terms of AutoCAD, I'm assuming by the question they're meaning in the 3D modeling environment of AutoCAD. It's very similar, and I think that's the thing you see in a lot of software, no matter if it's Inventor compared to Fusion, whether if it's AutoCAD compared to Inventor compared to, however you want to go through and whatever combination. And even in SolidWorks, because I've taught with SolidWorks as well, is that, Extrude in those programs is still taking a 2D sketch and adding a third dimension to it. And so a lot of those functionalities, a revolve is still taking a profile and, revolving it around an axis. So, you're still seeing a lot of the very common functionalities. Some of the menus may look just a little different, which I think is one of the things that sometimes can be a little tricky when you're first learning a new software or, transitioning to maybe a different software and using it. I'll be honest, when I had to use SolidWorks for the first time, I was such an inventor, only focused person that it was not my favorite thing ever, just being honest. But, and then after a while, I got to see using it more and getting used to those menus and those functionalities. I said, this is a really good software, and so, now, does my preference, if you gave me the option, would you rather use Inventor or would you rather use SolidWorks? I'd probably still pick Inventor, but I still recognize SolidWorks is a really great tool. And so you're going to see a lot of those same functionalities. And I think learning one is just going to go through and help you with learning more. So so the functionalities are pretty well the same. And like I said, if, I think the biggest thing, kind of as we've echoed before, play around with it, and just see. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we tell our teachers in the summer when we get done with the 2-week training, don't wait until school starts. You may have a month before school starts back up of summer vacation. Every day do something within the software, go through and practice with it and try it out. And so I would just echo that to anytime you're learning a new software, try something new, try to model your coffee cup that you drank coffee out of in the morning, try to model the plate that you ate your breakfast on, or, try to, and that's one thing that I do sometimes with students is just, we have a lot of, kind of random kind of drafting objects a lot of times that we kind of make as well. But, to me, it's great for them to see, pick out everyday objects and try to get them to model what that is. And so, and they really love that. And so, and I do a lot of projects with, kind of creating some things with I have one that's a 3D illusion lamp. It's the LED lighted base with the acrylic sheet, and they design and model that. And I do have a laser cutter, and we laser the design out, and then they get to keep that. So, things that they see in the world, if they can make it. And the same thing with anybody who's learning it, no matter what age you are. Like I said, I taught Fusion to, from 18 years old to 60 in one class. And so it was, no matter what, I think a lot of the intuitiveness comes in, and it just comes with practice, more and more practice.
No, that's great to hear. And I know we're ending, we're close to our time, but we'll do one more question. And I'm actually going to direct this to Marc. Marc, what advice would you give teachers to actually encourage and motivate, your students to learn Fusion 360?
Great question. I think the motivation piece is sometimes tough, depending on where the student is exactly at that point in time. But to motivate them is to show them the great features. Making a hanger is a couple clicks, and then making it their own. So very often we'll make a mug, and now what's your version of a mug? You get to put your creative spin on it, right? I think that's the sort of the key there. And that, to be honest, It's intuitive. It's low-hanging fruit. We're not making a V6 engine right now, right? We're making small pieces, or they want to make a Terminator. Everyone wants to make a machine that talks and walks. And I'll show Amazon's flying drone that, you know, checks out when they hear a noise, it checks out what's going on in the house. That's great. That's over here. We're still here right now. And we can get to that point later on, but showing them the low-hanging fruit and the things in their reach to motivate them, I think that's kind of the key.
No, that's great practical advice to end on. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and thank you all once again for panelists for taking their time out of their busy schedule. I know April is a busy season, I think, for all of us. So I just want to thank you so much. Like I said, we will send out a post-event email for the attendees that'll have our contact information. We'll put in Craig's YouTube channel in there as well. So obviously you can reach out to any of them. I'll also include my contact information as well, so we can continue this discussion offline. But thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.